Jack here, JBF Music and Guitar Lessons. In this quick guitar tricks, we're looking at dyads. What is a dyad, how to use them, create chords with them, looking at the 11 types you can get on the guitar without doubling notes, as well as some of the most common fingerings. These are great for riffing and for some more kind of raunchy soloing. It's well worth knowing all of these shapes. So by the end of this lesson, you should have an idea of what dyads are, some ways in which to use them, and practical fingerings for them. First up, what is a dyad? Well, it's a mini chord. I say mini chord because it only consists of 2 notes. Pretty much any 2 notes. Because of this, when in isolation, we generally don't have enough information to decide what chord it is. So stick around for a bit more on that later on. Right, before we crack on, you see those dyads in the tab there, right? Post your answers in the comments as to what chord you think each one is implying. Feel free to edit your answer if you change your mind by the end of the video. Oh yeah, and if you like the stuff I put out here but haven't yet subscribed, you'd be doing me a huge favour if you give that a click and enable notifications. So I'm going to go through these and what I see as the most common or easily applied through to the least. This will change a bit depending on the type of music you listen to the most, so I'm coming at this from probably more of a contemporary rock point of view. You'll no doubt already know the first one here, the 5th. If this already sounds like nonsense, check out the I up there for a lesson on intervals. So we can play it like this, or this. I have covered these different ways of playing intervals in the aforementioned video, so I'm not going to focus on that too much for the alternate fingerings, just sticking to the main ones. And a quick reminder that if you play these shapes on the D and the B, the G and the B strings, you'll need to move the fretted note on the B string up by a semitone. Similarly, if you're playing on the G and high E strings, you'll need to move the E's note up by a semitone. Again, this has been covered in much more detail in that lesson I mentioned earlier. So next we've got the 4th dyad. Instant Deep Purple with this one. The advantage of this over the 5th is it's a bit easier to move around quickly for riffing. You might have noticed that we're playing the same notes as the 5th as well, just with this note moved up here, so it's on top of the chord. In a nutshell, intervals will always invert into each other and always add up to 9, switching from major to minor where possible. Here we just have a 4th and a 5th, 4 and 5 equals 9. Most chords in any given key will have a 4th or a 5th. When I was just learning guitar, I found these intervals the most intuitive to use in terms of riffing and songwriting. After that, I sort of stumbled across this flat 6th. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, so 3rds are probably the next most common type. Okay, so a major 3rd looks like this. And a minor 3rd like this. As a side note, I'm keeping all of these dyads in the same key, so hopefully nothing sounds too weird or atonal, but this was why I'm jumping about quite so much on the fretboard. You'll find that playing static 3rds, be it major or minor, will give you an uneasy alien sound. That being the major and the minor. It's pretty common in metal, thrash, some indie music and certain types of jazz, but if we switch up the 3rds to conform to a key, we get a much more melodically consonant sound. Think get a Thin Lizzy or Iron Maiden. Next we have a flat 6th. So way back when, I used to use this to get back to an E, to avoid playing a 5th, which sounded weird to me on the F sharp. At the time I didn't know why, but I later found out that was because the 7th chord of the major scale, the diminished triad, doesn't have a perfect 5th. So this means if you're playing this note here, for in G major, which I was there, a note gets pushed out of key. So hopefully you heard a bit of unexpected tension when I played this last F sharp power chord. If you didn't, just hop the video back, listen to it again and watch out for it. So to get around this, playing my power chords, which was pretty much all I could do back then, I did used to use this shape. So in context, in terms of the music theory, in this context, we're pretty much implying a D major with this. More in the theory a little bit later on. It took me way longer to start using the major 6 in my riff writing, which goes like this. Okay, so you might notice that the thirds and the sixths sort of sound or feel a bit similar, a bit like the fourths and the fifths did. I'll give you a few seconds if you want to try and work out why. And for those of us who just want to plough onwards and not pause the video there, this is because they invert into each other. Just like the fourth and the fifth, you can sort of think of it as rotating into each other, or perhaps a bit better mirroring each other. In bar 7 we can see that the major third is this, and if we take this high note here, down an octave, so rotating it around this note here, it becomes a flat sixth. So major third, flat sixth, or minor sixth. Same if we take the major sixth and move this lower note up the octave, becomes a flat third. So essentially we can use these dyads to imply the same chord, albeit with a different voicing. For some more open chord voicings, check out the tutorial with the little I card up there. The exception of sorts, which the more mathematically inclined of you might have already pondered, is the sharp 4 or the flat 5, the tritone. Both notes being an equal distance from each other, this guy just inverts into itself. So you can see this note just moving up the octave, the shape staying exactly the same. This sounds really dissonant in isolation, like the start of Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze, but if you use it to resolve up to the fifth, it can be really quite effective. Paul Gilbert's Metal Dog uses this, although the notes are kind of split up. Nowhere by Irish Rockers Therapy, Buckethead's Project Little Man, and a Spaceman from Babylon Zoo, if you can remember them, probably showing my age there. They use this Tritone Dyad to great effect, resolving to the fifth. It's great for a more kind of edgy, popped up rock vibe. And since we've entered the Valley of Dissonance,
let us continue on our dark and twisted voyage.
Meet the second. You can use this to sound like a phone's ringtone. If novelty noises are up your alley and you want to find out how to do that, check out the tutorial with the card up there. Getting even more evil though is the flat second dyad, a minor second. Very Tool, very metal, particularly up on the higher strings. When in isolation, these sound rather jarring, and in the right context, they can be somewhat counterintuitively rather melodic. Okay, and if we invert those, we change the major to minor, and subtract from 9, the second becomes a 7. So if we took the major second, we turn that into 7th, and because it was major, it then becomes minor, so this is now a minor 7th. Quite spacey and ambiguous. Also good for funk if you resolve to the octave. Which you could count as a dyad as well, the octave. But for me, because it's the same note, it's just really unison. And then we have the minor second, right? So because it's minor, it'll become major. And again, 9 take away 2 is 7. So this will be a major 7th. And again, all I'm doing is moving this note here up the octave, rotating it round. That one if you want to think of it that way. So that's our major 7th. Again, this one sounds pretty tense, but it has a really nice resolution to the root or the octave. Quite similar to the tritone in that regard, actually. And once again, in a melodic or harmonic landscape with more information, this can sound really quite pleasant. So I'll give you an example here. So say we're playing a major 7th here. If we added in, let's say, this note and this note, It could be on the same guitar, it could be another guitar playing it. So there what I'm doing is playing a fifth, really, from that note there. You can probably recognize it better here. It's the same note here. But if I add that in to this kind of quite dissonant major seventh, so you can add in more harmonic context and something that is quite jarring. It'll sound nicer. I'm also playing the softer dynamically here, picking a lot lighter because it gets a nicer sound, and I'm hitting kind of harder here to really embrace the dissonance and improve that point, exaggerating it for effect there really. And since we've sort of happened across this anyway, I have been mentioning throughout that the dyads don't really give us much harmonic information. So with this third dyad, for example, it probably implies a G major. It could also be an E minor though. So if it's the notes G and B, we could stick a D on top of it, and voila, G major triad, root, third, fifth. But if we put an E below it, it becomes an E minor. E, G, B. A new root of E, it's flat third, and then fifth. Now, we could also double this G up the octave. So now we have a G, B, G. And while being three notes, we're still only playing two different types of notes, a G and a B. So this would work either over a G major or an E minor. If your basis is going between a G major and an E minor, either outlining the chords or just playing the root notes like that, you can play the same thing over it, and it'll still reinforce the chord. Where this might be handy if there's a particularly busy bass line, you can keep out the way and just hold the fort down with this tasty little dyad. So earlier I said this flat 6 dyad here implied a D major. I'll give you a few seconds to think about that in case you want to pause the video. And if you want me to just get on with it, we have an F sharp and a D. A D major is D, F sharp, A. That's a D major triad. So that's all done and dusted, yeah? Objection! Not so fast. We could create another chord by putting a note underneath it like before. Yep. So we could put a B, although I've run out of low notes, so I'll just pop it up here, right? And we get an F sharp, a D, and a B. Which is inverted but still suggests a B minor. Fifth, flat third, root. So say we wanted to lean into the idea of going G, B minor, E minor as a chord progression. We could use these dyads. But to make the cadence stronger, what we could do is borrow from the harmonic minor on this B minor, which would make it major. For more on why that happens, check out the Phrygian dominant lesson with the card up there. So instead of playing this flat 6th dyad, what could we do? Well, we can make the major third dyad from the B here, going B to D sharp. Or we could imply a B major by raising the note from our flat 6th dyad up a semitone to make it a major 6th dyad, where we have an F sharp and a D sharp. No B, but it'll feel really good resolving this to an E minor or even an E5 dyad. But why does that sound so right? Okay, well let's look at it. We're moving this F sharp down to an E. This is a nice stepwise motion, just moving down the scale, because it's the next note in the scale. And it acts a little bit like a leading note. At the other end, we've got this D sharp, which is just moving up a semitone. It's crossing a string, so it's a wee bit hard to tell without examining, but this note here, the D string 2nd fret, is just an E, as is this one. So rather than moving, we're moving there. So we're getting this really nice leading note here and a resolution from this end as well. So combining these two leading notes, and this one, as it were, gives us a really strong pull to an E minor chord or an E5 as I did in this case. The thirds, the 6th, 4ths and 5ths are the most open to being altered to a different chord by either stacking a new note a third above or below. The seconds and sevenths will imply seventh chords and sort of lead us into stacking dyads to create seventh chords and other extended chords, which is probably a topic for another day. So if you'd like to hear more about that, let me know with a comment. But those were the 11 dyads for guitar. This has been Quick Guitar Tricks, that's the playlist there. For more chord voicing stuffs, click there. But yeah, hit subscribe to keep up to date with the channel, leave me a comment, share it with fellow musicians, and enable notifications by ringing that little bell on the side if you feel so inclined. Cheers guys.